Okay, first I appreciate your invitation to this glorious forum. I'd like to emphasize that this is my first visit to Shanghai area. Anyway, okay, if you remember the year before, we have a series of crises in North Korea, the provocations by the North Koreans. The North Koreans launched missiles and conducted a nuclear test, which was afraid to let some kind of military conflict in the Korean Peninsula. As Professor Allison said in his keynote speech this morning, we have two ways to understand the First World War. The first interpretation is provided by Graham Allison, which is about, it was all about the two-state trap and the rising power Germany confronted with the declining power Great Britain. Another way to understand the First World War is a kind of a crisis management. Crisis instability was a serious problem, and all the major powers in 1914 aimed to control the crisis. However, they unfortunately and tragically failed. The outcome was a conflict that killed 10 million soldiers on the battlefield. Many South Koreans were seriously concerned about a second interpretation. We might have some kind of military confrontation in the Korean Peninsula, which nobody wanted at that time. The issue is, however, in these days, things are much better. At least we don't have these concerns in these days. We have the summit, which was canceled, but nobody knows what will happen, including Trump. As Dr. Katahara said, that we have a kind of very serious problem. And also, Professor Wei said that Americans are enjoying the tactical victory by taking advantage of its own unpredictability. However, I believe that this is a kind of a strategic kind of failure. What I'm trying to say is we have at least two different interpretations about the North Korea's nuclear issue. The one is this: at least two presidents, South Korea and North Korea, agreed to denuclearize Korean Peninsula. However, substantially, we have a disagreement over this issue, over this agreement. The one is, which is mainly about the North Koreans' understanding about the denuclearization, is North Koreans, Pyongyang, have been very consistent, okay, not have been very consistent, but kind of North Koreans are insisting that we have to denuclearize the entire Korean Peninsula, not only North Korea. Entire Korean Peninsula denuclearization means that first, North Korea go on nuclear. However, South Korea and its extended area should be denuclearized, which means that United States should stop provide nuclear umbrella or the extended nuclear deterrence over the South Korea. That's what those Koreans have been choosing. The problem is, or the flip side of this coin is, South Korea and Americans have been quite insistent that only the denuclearization should be limited only in the North Korea, not South Korea, because for two reasons. The first, South Korea is denuclearized already. The second, South Korea have not built the bomb in these days. So in order to denuclearize on the Korean Peninsula, we have only one area left. That is technically North Korea. That's the one misunderstanding over the many important issues. We have kind of same terms but different meanings in these days. This paradox caused a lot of problems. For example, North Koreans demand a security guarantee. However, this security guarantee includes withdrawal of the U.S. soldiers out of South Korea, termination of a U.S. ROK military alliance. Peace treaty is another example. North Koreans and the South Koreans, at least the two governments, agreed to declare or announce a kind of a war termination declaration by the end of this year, which is good. However, substantially, we have two different understandings about the same term. What do we mean by the termination of the Korean War? South Koreans believe that already we have only ceasefire agreement, so we are going to put this thing into an upper level, which is a formal treaty to announce the end of the Korean War. However, North Koreans believe that a peace treaty will be initiated only when United States agreed to withdraw its soldiers out of the Korean Peninsula. So we have another dimension of misunderstanding over the same term. This is a very serious problem. Therefore, in these days, for example, Dr. Takahara said that he is not kind of optimistic over the North Korea's denuclearization. Maybe I'm the one of them. However, we might have some other solutions to handle this problem. The problem is, as Takahara said, that we have short-range nuclear missile threat to Japan. Therefore, South Korea should need some kind of a guarantee that weakened U.S. extended deterrence to South Korea would not put South Korea's security in danger. When Pyongyang agreed to denuclearize the Korean Peninsula, but maybe North Koreans decide not to honor their commitment in the future. In this respect, I personally, as a kind of private citizen from South Korea, propose that we need some kind of a conventional forces reduction in the Korean Peninsula. Right now, we have 1.3 soldiers in North Korea and 50,000 soldiers in South Korea. This numerical imbalance might be one of the starting points to handle the problem. If North Korea agreed to reduce the number of soldiers, and according to their official idea, North Korea would go for economic development. Therefore, 1.3 soldiers is simply too much financial and economic burden for the North Korean economy. Therefore, conventional military reduction might be a good idea for Pyongyang as well. And for South Korea, it is a great sign or the greatest signal that North Korea is willing to cooperate, willing to handle the issues through dialogue rather than nuclear development. Another sign might be a kind of a withdrawal or the reduction of long-range artillery that threatens in these days Seoul metropolitan areas. So metropolitan areas are too close to the DMZ, therefore it is vulnerable to North Korean long-range artillery fires. In this sense, we might have better chance to strike a deal with the North Koreans. What if North Korea just simply forget about half of its long-range artillery and choose to cut the number of soldiers by 25% or the 30%? I believe that provides a very good opportunity between the South and the North Koreans. The last thing that I'd like to emphasize in these days is this. Can we trust North Koreans? And at this point, nobody would say that this is a trustworthy partner. Clearly, Pyongyang stood up the Americans in these days. Pyongyang agreed not to raise the issue of a military exercise with the United States and South Korea. However, it just renegated not all of them, many of its promises in these days. Is it trustworthy? I'm not sure. However, these are two signals. The reduction of conventional forces and the reduction of long-range artillery might be a good starting point to build trust. Maybe we have to know how to build the trust. We don't need the trust between friends or the allies because we trust with each other. Trust building is only necessary or sometimes required because we don't trust our partners. This is some other ways to do the same business. People are just talking about the nuclear disarmament. However, in these days, at least from the viewpoint of South Koreans, we have another issue that has been neglected by international community. That is a conventional threat, and that might be the better or sometimes a good point to start. truly institutionalize stability. I would not emphasize peace. The only point that I could emphasize is this is the only way, or maybe the best way to institutionalize stability in the Korean Peninsula. Let me stop here. Yes.
Thank you, Professor Lee. Suppose Trump and Kim Jong-un will meet, and they can also make a deal. So what in the deal will worry you most? I mean, if Trump and Kim Jong-un will make a deal, is there anything that will worry you very much in that? What you don't want to see in the deal?
In this deal, and people, and in general, the consensus is, okay, the deal must be about the nuclear weapons. We might have some kind of limited inspection teams allowed, North Koreans. However, the Pyongyang would insist that North Korean inspectors team should be allowed in the American military facilities in East Asia. That's a kind of, okay, it's a pro quo, so you allowed this, and I will have another benefit to see your military facilities. I'm quite skeptical that whether the United States would allow that. That's another issue. The clear problem is that, as I said, conventional threat issue has been neglected in this deal. People are talking about nuclear deal. Okay, this is good, and this is, at least it is better than nothing, I have to say. However, even without nuclear weapons, North Koreans have presented existential threat to South Koreans. So we need some more than that. We need more than nuclear agreement. We need more than something that Trump and Kim would agree in order to feel safe. I would not, as I said, I would not dare to enjoy some kind of a permanent peace in the Korean Peninsula. The only thing that I aim for, the only thing that I can ask is kind of a stability. Stability that I can live with, stability that my daughters will live. Okay.
Well, let me push you a little bit regarding the reduction or withdrawal of U.S. forces from the Korean Peninsula. Should that be part of the nuclear deal, or it should be part of the future deal regarding the conventional capability on the both sides of the Korean Peninsula? What's your take?
Okay. You said withdrawal, the reduction might be unacceptable for the South Korean public. However, the withdrawal of the U.S. forces from the Korean Peninsula, that's kind of very tricky. Under the current public opinions, withdrawal, the U.S. forces might, in my opinion, in my private opinion, might encourage South Korea's conservative groups to argue for the independent nuclear forces. So which one is better? We will have U.S. forces in Korean Peninsula that keeps South Korea denuclearized, or the non-U.S. soldiers but nuclear armed South and North Korea. I'm not sure. That's the dilemma that we are faced with. That's the choice that we will make in years to come, or maybe in decades to come.
Thank you.